Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Genaro. That's Duran.
Yep.
Welcome to our podcast. Today is our last division of the segment of the off-season transaction with the NFC West, one of the strongest divisions of football today. And those teams include Arizona Cardinals, LA Rams, San Francisco 49ers, and the Seattle Seahawks. So we're going to kick it off with the Arizona Cardinals. Before we do, let's got to talk about last night, man. Last night, things started opening up here in Sonoma County. We visited Fog Belt, just like old times, man. How was that? How'd you like that experience?
Feels good, man. Just feels like things are finally getting back to normal. Our Friday nights are back. We can go out and drink some beer, have a cigar, and hopefully football comes back in full force.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, so what beer were you sipping on yesterday?
I was drinking two, Del Norte
Okay.
from Fog Belt and also Screaming Giant, two of their IPAs.
Yeah, I had the Stardust, the juicy IPA. It was pretty good. A little bit of hazy, but it's pretty solid.
Yeah, Screaming Giant's one of my favorites.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely good. So I think next week we got to include a cigar in that one wherever we go.
Yeah, now that cigar shops open up, we can go sit down and have one.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, so back to it. Let us go into the Arizona Cardinals.
So for the Arizona Cardinals, I think we're going to agree on this one. For their best addition, DeAndre Hopkins, the wide receiver coming over from Houston.
Yeah.
This pick was just obvious to me, and I think it was the best move in all of free agency. The Cardinals gave up a second and fourth round pick and also got to dump David Johnson's contract in the move. Even
Yeah.
though I like David Johnson, they found his replacement last year and probably gladly let him go. Hopkins is arguably one of the best wide receivers in the game. He's a three-time All-Pro, not a diva. He shows up and puts in work. Since 2013, he's been top three in receptions, yards, and touchdowns. Other than Watson, he did that with quarterbacks like Matt Schaub, TJ Yates, and Brock Osweiler. I mean, this guy just puts in work. He's now 28 years old with Kyler Murray, who needed a number one wide receiver. Larry Fitzgerald's getting a little bit old, or he is getting old, and they needed that big body guy out there. No Cardinals receiver had 1,000 yards, has had 1,000 yards since 2017, and that was when Larry Fitzgerald and Carson Palmer teamed up. So I'm excited to see what Hopkins does in this high-paced offense. He's now being paired with the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Both are still pretty young, and I think they'll become one of the top duos in the NFL.
Yeah, I went with Nuke as well. I mean,
Of
for
course.
everything you said, man. I mean, like you said, we were going to agree, and we did. So you can't look at that receiving core now and think that's a threat. And the bonus is they got to dump that huge contract. That's super ridiculous, but they got to dump that whole contract out on Houston and let them kind of suffer with that, see how they do. I don't think that David Johnson is going to return to the form that me and you both liked coming out of Northern Iowa, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll definitely see. I'm excited to see Kyler Murray going up against teams with Larry Fitz. Now they got Nuke, so that's their receiving core right there.
Yep. So for the biggest loss, I was trying to narrow it down. I ended up narrowing it down to AQ Shipley or David Johnson. And because AQ Shipley didn't perform that well, I ended up just going with David Johnson. The Cardinals didn't lose many players from last year. And I just think David Johnson was better at his position than AQ was at his. I think if
Yeah.
he gets back to that 2016 shape, he would have been the perfect fit for the Cardinals. Before his injury, PFF ranked him as the number one running back in the league, and he shined in the passing game. He had over 2,000 total yards, and I know a big part of the move was his contract, but if he would have been starting with this at his 2016 self in this offense, I think he would be killing it once again. But one thing that I didn't like about the Cardinals moving on to Kenyon Drake is they ended up hitting him with the transition tag, and that immediately made him the number 6 highest paid running back in the league. So they're still saving money by choosing Drake over Johnson, but it's $4 million. If everything was equal, I think I would still stick with David Johnson and see if he can get back to himself. We'll see how things work out in Arizona, but I still have confidence in David Johnson.
Yeah, I couldn't really choose one, to be honest with you. I couldn't. So, I mean, I guess you could say David Johnson by default, but they played a lot without him last year. So, yeah, I couldn't choose one, to be honest with you. So, I'm going to have to agree with you. Kind of forced my hand right there. I didn't have one. So.
Yeah, it's a little bit on AQ Shipley, who's their starting center. Centers are important, especially for young guys, getting some continuity with their offensive line. He played over 95% of their snaps, and I think they might even upgraded from moving on from him. So that's why I went with David.
Gotcha.
Moving on to draft picks.
All right, the draft picks. With pick 8, they got Isaiah Simmons, Clemson, inside linebacker. With their round 2 pick, you can say they got Nuke Hopkins. So round 3, pick 72, they got Josh Jones, lineman out of Houston. Round 4, pick 114, Leki Fotu, defensive tackle from Utah. Then they went with Rashard Lawrence, defensive tackle, LSU. They went with round 6, pick 202, Evan Weaver, inside linebacker out of Cal. Round 7, pick 222, running back Eno Benjamin from ASU, local kid.
Nice. So my favorite draft pick was actually Josh Jones, the offensive tackle from Houston. I know Simmons is clearly the best player, but I went with Jones. He was a great value in the 3rd round and out of position of need. Dane Brugler had him as a borderline 1st and 2nd round tackle, and PFF actually ranked him as the number 14th overall player. So Jones was a 4-year starter at Houston, a former team captain. I think he'll be expected to come in and start day 1. The Cardinals gave up the 5th most sacks in 2019, and Kyler Murray having some experience under his belt and quick release style, I expect that to drop. A lot of the sacks are actually accredited to Kyler Murray, so I think he just needs to settle down, get comfortable in the NFL, and he'll be doing his thing. But they still need to continue building this offensive line for him, but I think this is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I also went with Josh Jones as well, only because I had him as one of my top. I had him as one of my top, linemen. I was waiting for him to go around 2, and he ended up going round 3. Great value, like you said. He shows dominant flashes. Needs a little bit of help on his footwork, but he has good functional athleticism. He is a little bit raw, like I said. He has a high ceiling, low floor. He's pretty much every offensive coach's in the NFL, his dream. Great physical tools, great raw talent. Just definitely needs to be kind of molded. So hopefully they got what it takes there in Arizona.
Yeah, one other thing that I heard about him is he does really good about getting to that second level. And I think that's a big part of what Arizona does, getting to that second level with the quick passing game and all those receivers. So I think he's just going to fit in well for what they do here.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see. He's great size and mobility, but just need to tweak up a little bit on his technique, and I think he'll be a solid starter in the NFL.
Yep, there you go. Who we got next?
All right, so we got the LA Rams.
LA Rams.
So their best addition, who do you got?
For their best addition, I went with Leonard Floyd, the edge rusher from the Bears. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Leonard Floyd, I'm definitely not a fan of the contract they signed him to, but it was between him or Ashawn Robinson. I think Floyd will just provide more heat off the edge with the big guys clogging the middle. They got Aaron Donald, Ashawn Robinson bringing, one of them's definitely going to require a double team there. So Leonard Floyd should have his way on the outside. I kind of want to say that, but he also had Khalil Mack on the other side for the Bears and only put up 3 sacks and 900 plays. So he didn't really take advantage of that those single blocks on that side. But he's only 27 years old. He was once the number 10 overall pick, and maybe this is his last chance to live up to the hype, and maybe it lights a little bit of a fire under his ass. PFF has never ranked him inside the top 35 edge rushers. I'm just hoping for the best. I wish they would have added offensive lineman, and I probably would have went with that because their offensive line was pretty trash last year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that one. I too went with Leonard Floyd. They didn't really add much, but yeah, they went with Alshon Robinson as well. But I think the more impact player is Leonard Floyd. Hopefully he gets some pressure with everything. But we'll see. Hopefully, like you said, a lot of fire up on his ass, man. Like he needs to do a little bit better. So hopefully a new scenery will help him out.
Yeah, I remember when he was coming out, he's one of those really thin edge rusher guys, and he just hasn't lived up to it yet.
Yeah.
All right, for the biggest loss, go ahead. Who do you have?
For the biggest loss, I went with Corey Littleton.
Yep.
Corey Littleton. He is now. Let's see where did he go? He actually went to
Raiders.
I was gonna say Oakland. Yeah, I was gonna say Oakland for a second. I was gonna say the Oakland Raiders. But
linebacker now in Vegas.
Yeah, he's now in Vegas. This guy was a stud. Good coverage linebacker for sure. Definitely seen him twice a year. Me as a Nice fan. He definitely, proposes for that. He played 16 games all last year. He had 3.5 sacks, 78 solo tackles, and 2 forced fumbles last year. So he brings a lot of experience to the Raiders. He's been with the Rams here since 2016. Made a Pro Bowl last year, 2018. Didn't do so much as 2018 or 2019. So we'll definitely see. He's definitely my biggest loss for them.
Yeah, he is also my biggest loss. I was narrowing it down to either Littleton or Gurley, but I went with Littleton because of the amount of snaps that he played, and Gurley kind of ended up petering out towards the end. He led the team in tackles the last 2 years, and I don't see a clear replacement for him on the team. All the guys on the team definitely can't replace his production, and they didn't draft a guy at his position until the 7th round. I like their D-line. I like their secondary. It's decent, but there's a big hole at that linebacker position. I mean, it could be the worst group in the league, so Littleton will definitely be missed. All right, so next for the LA Rams is our favorite draft pick. So to go over their draft real quick, in the 2nd round, they had 2 picks. They got Cam Akers, the Florida State running back, Van Jefferson, Florida wide receiver. They had 2 third-round picks, Terrell Lewis, Alabama outside linebacker, Terrell Burgess, Utah safety. 4th round, they had Bryson Hopkins, Purdue tight end. 6th round, Jordan Fuller, Ohio State safety. 3 7th-round picks, Clay Johnston, Baylor inside linebacker, Sam Salmon, Miami of Ohio, place kicker, and Tremaine Archam, Clemson offensive guard. So who was your favorite draft pick?
So for Terrell Burgess, he's my favorite draft choice of theirs. Wasn't a huge fan of their whole draft, like I said.
Yep.
But watching him, he definitely was actually a pleasant surprise, I should say. Mm-hmm. He may lack length. He can yield some separation in man coverage, but his recovery instinct is very strong. He has a good motor on him. He has a high football IQ. Listening to interviews with his former teammate Jalen Johnson, he had nothing but great things to say about Terrell Burgess's football IQ. He didn't mention the tackling, but he actually is a short tackler, watching him at the Senior Bowl. So I think, he can open up. He have versatility. He can play corner. He can play safety. They got a solid DB. So we'll see.
Yep.
What about you?
Yeah, I went with Terrell Burgess as well, safety from Utah. They got him at the number 104 overall pick, and it looks like he'll end up playing that nickel cornerback safety role, and they needed to fill that spot because they lost Nickel Roby Coleman last year, and he was one of the top slot cornerbacks in the league. And Burgess is versatile and is able to cover tight ends and slot position, and that's just going to be needed in that division, especially with guys like George Kittle, Larry Fitzgerald, and Tyler Lockett. So he'll probably end up battling with David Long, who I liked coming out of Michigan, but he only played 27 snaps last year in the slot. So I think Burgess will be able to come in and fill that need for them. If it works out and he is the starter, I think they actually have a pretty good set of corners there with Jalen Ramsey and Troy Hill on the outside, and Burgess will be able to play that slot position and, provide some good coverage moving forward with a solid defensive line.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, that brings up to my San Francisco 49ers.
Go ahead, take the lead. Who is your favorite addition?
All right, yeah. So my favorite addition for the 49ers was Trent Williams. They lost Joe Staley due to retirement. Broke my heart. Definitely was one of my favorite 49ers since he came into the building. High character, high everything. Team captain, was a great guy, great solid guy. I met him in person. Super nice, super chill dude. Guy I want to drink beers with. But they replaced him with Trent Williams. Trent Williams was actually ranked one of the, if not the best, left tackle in the game. He took a year off, like we were talking about in the previous episode when we're talking about the biggest losses of the Washington Redskins. This guy, definitely is a stud. He wants to come in. He's aggressive. He's competitive. They see that he might still have a little bit more beef with Richard Sherman, but they actually squashed that right after that all that stuff happened. He's very fluid. He's coming from the system beforehand. He wants to play for a bigger contract, so I expect him to play his ass off. So I'm excited to see Trent Williams in a Niner uniform. I'm just hoping that we can see him on the field here soon. Sounds like he's healthy, though. Sounds like he's good to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the best addition, I went with Brandon Ayuk, the wide receiver from Arizona State. I mean, they traded up and got the player that they wanted at number 25. They traded from the second round back into the first to snag him. And since they lost Emmanuel Sanders in free agency, they wanted to attack this position. I could see Ayuk developing into that Sanders-like player. He gets to team up with Deebo Samuel and George Kittle at tight end, and all these guys could, get some serious yards after the catch. And Kyle Shanahan just knows how to get guys like this the ball in space. And I just don't see Jalen Hurd or Dante Pettis beating him out and taking his position. So I think he fits exactly what the Niners want to do. So for their offense, I just expect another three-headed monster at running back, heavy play action, find these pass catchers in open space, and Ayuk is just another piece to the puzzle, and will keep defenses on their toes.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm excited about that one, 100%.
Yep. So for their biggest loss, who'd you go with?
Their biggest loss, I actually went with DeForest Buckner. I know we're talking about Joe. I was just talking about Joe Staley and how he was one of my favorite guys, but actually so was DeForest Buckner since entering the league from Oregon in the first round. I put DeForest Buckner because he's one of the best. put him neck and neck with Aaron Donald as the inside, defensive line. So that inside defensive line pressure was huge. He sucked up a lot of blocks. He was great in the run game, great in the pass rush. They did draft Brandon Ayuk, or not Brandon Ayuk. They drafted Javon Kinlaw to replace him.
Yep.
But like me and you were talking about actually last night, it's what have you done for me lately? And I haven't seen that at all. And how could you, being that Kinlaw is a rookie? But it's hard to replace that leadership experience that he has, listening to interviews that he had, interviews that his former teammates had, like Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa recently just said that guy was the captain of our defensive line. He called out all the assignments on third down and whatnot. He's only been a Pro Bowl 1 year, which is last year, but it's pretty crazy. His last year's stats, he started all 16 games. He had 2 forced fumbles, he had 4 fumble recoveries. He actually had a fumble recovery against the Seahawks to the house. Mm-hmm. He had 34 solo tackles, 62 combined, and he had 9 tackles for loss, 14 quarterback hits, and he had 7.5 sacks last year.
Yep, it's tough to do from that interior position too. 7.5 is a good number.
Yeah, so I understand I think Kinlaw is going to be making 60% of what DeForest, makes. So if he can bring at least just 60% what DeForest, Buckner did, then I think the Niners are in good shape. But that is a tough and huge, being that he's 6'7", that's a huge shoes to fill.
Yep.
So we'll see. What about you for biggest?
I ended up going with Emmanuel Sanders, the wide receiver that ended up taking off to the Saints. I could have went with Buckner here also, but I went with Sanders because I feel like he immediately changed that offense last year. I think that's what eventually made the Niners the best team in the NFC. They also got good compensation for Buckner with a 13th overall pick, so Sanders to me was just a bigger loss. He was a seasoned veteran. He stepped in week 8 and had back-to-back touchdown games, including a 7-catch, 100-yard game. I think Ayuk will be good, but I don't know if he can make that instant impact. I could see Sanders picking up right where he left off with the Niners and becoming that same instant boost for the Saints. And, the Saints needed him as well. So, Emmanuel Sanders, I think he'll be tough to replace.
Yeah, definitely huge replat. Definitely huge shoes to fill.
Yeah. The Niners actually ended up filling some holes that they had in their draft. Do you want to go over their draft picks?
Yeah. So the draft they didn't have a lot, and that's totally fine. They went with round 1, pick 14, defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
They traded up from their 31 spot to 25 to get wide receiver Brandon Ayuk, Arizona State. And then they traded Marquise Goodwin for this pick. They got pick 153, offensive tackle Colton McKivitz, West Virginia. Round 6, they went pick 190, which also was acquired via trade, was Charlie Warner, Georgia, tight end. Round 7, 217, wide receiver Juwan Jennings, Tennessee.
Yeah, all their draft picks were trades. So every single one was a trade in one way or another. So who was your favorite one?
Out of my favorite one of the draft was actually Brandon Ayuk. Okay. Brandon Ayuk was my favorite one of the draft because, when we first started watching film, we started watching Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Reagor, and I saw Ayuk and I said, this guy reminds me of a kind of a, gadget type of player. Not necessarily gadget, but he's definitely – we're talking about positionless football and how that is with the 49ers. They have a bunch of spots in the receiver core, so I think that made me want to choose Brandon Ayuk for the 49ers. I admit, when we did draft him, I was kind of let down because I did want CeeDee Lamb. I did want Jerry Jeudy or Henry Ruggs. But Brandon Ayuk, definitely a Kyle Shanahan type of receiver. If you look at this guy's wingspan, it stretches out to 6'9".
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty crazy. He's already out there running somewhere else at San Jose State with Jimmy G and all the other receivers out there. Getting that camaraderie is huge. But watching him play, he reminds me a little bit of Deebo Samuel with the jet sweeps and whatnot. So I think that when he's starting off, he's definitely going to keep a short leash on him, kind of keep him limited to his route tree. So definitely not going to have him run every single route, but definitely limited how they did with Deebo Samuel and kind of ease his way in and then just let him run loose. Watching this guy plays, he did struggle against defeating press coverage, but his explosiveness is off the charts. He may not have ran the best 40, but he was also battling a core injury, which he did have surgery on and repaired well from it. But the GPS trackers that they do put in pads, they put it inside of his pads one time at Arizona State, and they actually did track him at 22 miles per hour. So that's pretty quick. So his 40 time may not, give it justice, but man, if that guy's running with pads on at 22 miles per hour, I think he can run a little bit faster with the pads off. But
Yeah.
we'll see. So he's my favorite draft pick, and I'm excited to see him in the 49ers uniform.
Yeah, same here. So my favorite draft pick for the Niners, I went with Javon Kinlaw, the defensive tackle from South Carolina. I liked him because he instantly fills that void left by Buckner. Buckner led the team in snaps for all defensive linemen, and the Niners didn't have that immediate replacement to go in there and fill in for him. So the Niners got to the Super Bowl being number 5 in sacks and allowing the least amount of passing yards in the league. And I could see them trying to replicate that this year again, especially with this pick. I mean, Kinlaw's another massive player. He was chosen with the same pick that they received in the Buckner trade, so the comparison will always be there, and he does have some big shoes to fill. But I think he'll help this stacked defensive line. Like we said earlier, it's all first-round picks. Nick Bosa, Solomon Thomas, Eric Armstead. Those guys will lead the way, and the Niners hope to have the top defense in the NFC once again.
Yeah, for sure. I'm hoping so, man. I think Adam Rank just did his famous prediction, and last year he said 3-13, and this year he's saying 12-4. So I'll be happy with that for sure.
Yep.
So that moves us on to the Seattle Seahawks.
The Seattle Seahawks. So my favorite addition for them was Quentin Dunbar, the cornerback that they received from the Redskins. And the Seahawks only had to give up a 5th-round pick for him. And he was PFF's second highest rated cornerback in 2019. He's 6'2", and I think he fits exactly what the Seahawks like to do with their cornerbacks. So now he gets to team up with Shaquille Griffin and make a pretty good duo there on the outside. My main concern with them is I don't know who's going to play their slot cornerback spot. I don't know who's going to step up and take that job, but they don't have much depth behind Griffin and Dunbar. So if one of those guys go down, it's going to be tough for them. And that slot position, who's going to take that? They got guys in their division, Larry Fitzgerald, Cooper Kupp, and, I think they'll struggle a little bit with that. So we'll see who gets the targets and who has to step up.
Yeah, for their cornerbacks, we got Shaquille Griffin, Nico Thorpe, Brian Allen, Jason Stanley, Bradley McDougal, Lano Hill. Yeah, like you said, they need to figure out that nickel position for sure. I'm not too sure they're going to do it. They didn't really address it.
Yeah, I think their third guy is probably going to be Trey Flowers, but he even hasn't been that good. But, yeah, Shaquille Griffin, Quentin Dunbar, those would be their main guys, but they really got to stay healthy this year.
Yeah, so my favorite addition, actually, I went with a familiar face for them is Bruce Irvin, their former first-round pick back in former first-round pick back in 2012. He was with the team for 4 years, and they didn't re-sign him to his 5th-year contract, and then that's when Oakland swooped on him. He was with Oakland for 2 years. Then he traded he was traded to Atlanta that year. Then he also last year recently he played with Carolina. He
Yep.
played 13 games. He started 12, but I think looks like he had 8.5 sacks last year, 36 combined tackles. 22 of those were solo, 14 assisted, 8 tackles for loss, 16 quarterback hit, 1 safety. So I think that brings outside pressure, what the Seahawks don't really have. Last year they drafted L.J. Collier, isn't really producing much, and they already have Bruce Irvin listed ahead of them. So they needed some quarterback pressure, especially being in this division. Excuse me, being in this division. So I think they brought back a speed rusher with Bruce Irvin. So hopefully he can provide pressure to that quarterback.
Yep. So moving on to their biggest loss. Who did you have?
Their biggest loss for them, let's see here. I couldn't really put a finger on it because they didn't really lose anybody big, in my opinion, but I'd have to say maybe DJ Fluker.
Mm-hmm.
DJ Fluker used definitely their guard, but he wasn't necessarily like the best inside guard for sure, but he was a starter for them, and they got to replace him. We'll see how he does. He's now with the Baltimore Ravens, but he played 10 games. He started 9 at right guard. He signed a 2-year extension for $9 million with the Seahawks. Then he was released from that contract. So I wouldn't say that's a big loss, but it's a loss, I should say, to put my name in the hat. But I don't think they lost anybody in particular that was huge. Maybe Quentin Jefferson, but he was more of a situational guy. I think they addressed it with Bruce Irvin. I don't think they really addressed it there with DJ Fluker at the inside guard, because the guard they got, Damian Lewis they drafted, but he's a rookie. We'll see how he does. And then they have a Mike Iupati from the left side, and he's got himself, pretty grounded there on the left side. So we'll see.
Yeah, I ended up going with – one second. I ended up going with Jadeveon Clowney. He's currently a free agent, and I don't know where he's going to go next. He's probably waiting for an injury or something like that too. But when the Seahawks traded for him, they probably wanted more than 13 games. He was the former number 1 overall pick, and he's just looking for that big money deal. But unfortunately, his issue is consistency and injury problems. Even though he shows some of those flashes of elite ability, he's never crossed 10 sacks in a season. And I know he's only 27 years old and he's got a lot left in the tank, but he'll probably have to sign another 1-year deal and be back on the market next year. The Seahawks, I think, needed him back this year because they are starting Bruce Irvin, who you just mentioned, and Benson Mayowa. Both of those guys are older than Jadeveon Clowney and less productive. So, unfortunately, I think his price tag is just too much for the team to bite on. So, he'll probably have to settle, like I said, for a 1-year deal. And hopefully next year he'll have more than 3 sacks than he did this year, because that's just not what he wanted to do.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't even remember Jadeveon Clowney or whatever. I don't know. I just didn't think that, like you said, he'd never crossed 10 sacks in his career. Last year, he only had 3.
Yeah.
Being a high-end name, I'm pretty sure 2 of them came against an injured Joe Staley last year, too, in that first meeting on Monday night against the 49ers. But since then, he hasn't really done much. Same could be said about DJ Fluker. But, yeah, they didn't really lose a whole bunch with the gut punch. And I trust Pete Carroll. As much as it burns to say, I trust Pete Carroll to get the job done. Especially with Russell Wilson at the helm, I think the team's in good shape.
True. He'll probably dig up one of those undrafted free agents and plug them in, and they'll become a starter. He seems to do that every year. But, yeah, also I think Jadeveon Clowney was playing a little bit out of position. I think, they just run a different defense than he likes to run. So hopefully he finds a home that he likes.
Yeah, for sure.
Moving on to draft picks. You want to go over the Seattle Seahawks draft picks?
Sure. Another it's another draft that I wasn't a big fan of.
Yeah, they do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, they do. So they went with round 1, pick 27, Jordan Brooks, linebacker, Texas Tech. Round 2, pick 48, Darrell Taylor, defensive end, Tennessee. Round 3, pick 69, nice, Damian Lewis, guard at LSU. Round 4, pick 33, Kobe Parkinson, tight end, Stanford. Round 4, pick 144, DJ Dallas, running back, Miami. Round 5, pick 148, Alton Robinson, defensive end, Syracuse. Round 6, pick 214, Freddie Swine, receiver, Florida. Round 7, pick 251, Stephen Sullivan, tight end, LSU.
Got it. So my favorite draft pick out of this, I went with Damian Lewis, the guard from LSU. And that's just because Seattle always needs help on the offensive line. PFF ranked their line number 27 in the league last year, and they did need a replacement for that tackle position. Lewis will come in, and I think he's a pretty good fit in Seattle. He's 330 pounds. He's a big mauling guard. So he plays with some attitude. I think Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde will enjoy running behind him. With Russell Wilson leading the charge, I mean, I think Seattle improved on offense this year. So we'll see what they have in store.
Yeah, I went with Kobe Parkinson, the tight end, just because how big this kid is. He gives them a red zone target. Yeah, they did add Greg Olsen in the draft, but they definitely need a younger. So that's a good addition to help out these young guys they just drafted. He's listed at 6'7", 251, so that's a big boy. That's definitely helping him out in the red zone where they struggled a little bit last year. His best film I watched him against was I think it was Oregon State, maybe it was Notre Dame. I'm not too sure, but he definitely has a good, solid football IQ. He has good ball skills. He needs to work on his point of attack, but I think he's going to be doing well in the NFL for sure. Definitely learning behind Greg Olsen. Hopefully, Greg Olsen's healthy. So he requires a little bit more, molding, I should say, but I think his catch radius and his strong hands will definitely help out for sure.
Yeah, I don't know much about Jacob Hollister, but I think that Seattle has a decent set of tight ends here. With Greg Olsen, I also liked Will Dissly. He stepped it up last year and was pretty damn productive before getting hurt. I was pretty disappointed when he went down.
Yeah, I had him on my fantasy team, and I was like, oh, yeah, this guy's good. As soon as they added him, he got hurt. So I don't know if it was a curse or not, but he definitely got hurt. Looking at this draft, I just wasn't a big fan of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Darrell Taylor's coming off an injury, so maybe if he returns back to his forms, what he did have in Tennessee, maybe he'll be solid. But, we'll see. I also like DJ Dallas, but they just signed Carlos Hyde. They got Penny. They got Carson, and they got the other Miami kid from last year, Travis Homer. So it was a surprise pick for me, but I did love DJ Dallas. He reminds me of he has some traits of Frank Gore when it comes to pass protection. So he's excited for that. Like if you come in, he wants to hit you. That's something I did see, and that's something I saw all the years that Frank Gore had with the 49ers. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes for them. We'll see how this draft class turns out. Like you said, they do what they want, and they find a way to win.
So I think that'll do it for episode 1.9. Thanks for listening to this series. Stay tuned for what we got next. I think we're doing surprise playoff teams, who will be in, who will be out. But keep looking at our channel. We'll be back. Until next time.
All right. See ya.